whose name sleeps in my heart, and there it is. It's apart my eyes windows to the beauty of your name. 7 letters that I've loved formed to be.
Assalamu alaikum wa welcome. We hope inshallah that you've been making the most of the majalis and inshallah have reaped the rewards. And of course, the same for you, Sister Zara. I do hope that your commemorations during these times of mourning is accepted and inshallah you've benefited from them.
Oh, thank you so much, Ali, and same to you as well. Alhamdulillah, I've been trying to make the most of the month of Muharram before and after the day of Ashura, which is important. And inshallah, I pray that the viewers at home and the many millions of those who flock to the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam have benefited too, especially those who can't make the ziyarah this year.
Yeah, indeed. Let us begin this morning with Brother Mustafa Al-Ali, who once again will be blessing our studio with a beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran from Surah Ibrahim.
We also have Brother Ibrahim Ansari on the couch and with our daily du'as, which is a staple for us during these morning times. And today we will be looking at the second part of Ziyarah Ashura. Can't wait for that.
Of course, we're also bringing you live footage from those on pilgrimage, taking part in the Arba'in walk and looking forward to that. Inshallah, you can reap the benefits of seeing the walk from the comfort of your own home. And right after that, we also have my favorite part of the show, the latam and the recitations and the poetry as well. And today, as always, we have the great poet Nouri Sardar. Really looking forward to that, actually.
Absolutely looking forward to it as well. And today we also have Sister Masuma Jafar answering your personal questions with Dear Masuma. Today we will be discussing repentance, a great reminder of one of our shaheeds of Karbala, Hazrat Hur. Looking forward to that, inshallah.
Of course. We also have our cutest guest, I guess. Our little Husseini is educating us on the rituals during Muharram and Safar.
And finally, we also have Sayyid Mohsin Shah on the couch with your fit questions and queries.
Of course. And right now, we are giving you the opportunity to deliver a personal ziyarah to any member of your deceased family or friends. And of course, more details with our colleague in Karbala, Brother Ali.
بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله بأبي أنت وأمي.
We are born with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We learn to crawl, to walk, to read, and to write. We live our lives. We donate to humanity, we donate to society, and we donate to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Before you know it, we die. We leave this life and we move on to the next journey. Morning Barakah is offering you the chance to help your loved ones on their journey. We are taking down names of your loved ones who are no longer with you to dedicate a recitation of the holy ziyarat of Imam Hussein to them. Our reciters will recite a Ziyarat Ashura on your loved one's behalf right here from the holy land of Karbala and in front of the holy shrine of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, Abu Abdullah. We understand the pain of losing a loved one and wanting to do the best for their akhirah. That is why Morning Barakah is giving you the opportunity to give comfort to those who have moved on. All we want you to do is to send in the names of your loved ones, family members, neighbors, friends, associates, and we will recite and donate to their akhirah only on Morning Barakah here on IMAM HUSSEIN TV 3.
If you would like to participate in this initiative, please send the name of the marhum you would like the ziyarah read for to either Morning Barakah at imamhussein.tv or comment your marhumeen's names on our Instagram page at IMAM HUSSEIN 3 TV, and we will make sure this gift reaches them.
Yes, indeed, a very good morning to you all. Before we start with the proceedings of the daily dua segment of Morning Barakah, Zara, we're going to be listening to some Holy Quran today.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
With Mustafa Al-Ali. Assalamu alaikum, Mustafa.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing this morning?
Alhamdulillah, how about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. We're doing
Looking forward to listening
well.
to you, definitely.
Yeah, so inshallah today will be Surah Ibrahim, Surah Ibrahim is chapter 14. Verse 24 for the convenience of the viewers, of course, so that they can follow as part of the show. So we look forward to hearing from you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون. ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون. ومثل كلمة خبيثة كشجرة خبيثة اجتثت من فوق الأرض ما لها من قرار. ومثل كلمة خبيثة كشجرة خبيثة اجتثت من فوق الأرض ما لها من قرار. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ويضل الله الظالمين ويفعل الله ما يشاء صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Fantastic recitation as always, Mustafa Al-Ali. Many thanks for your time. And of course, we have now arrived at the part of the daily du'as. And essentially, as ever, we are discussing or taking a bit of a deep dive into the du'as and the supplications associated with Muharram and the Safar, the events of Ashura and the Arba'een. So far, Zara, we've taken a look into the dua for the beginning of the month.
Definitely.
We've also taken a deep dive into Ziyad Ashura.
I found that that was a nice, quite fascinating conversation. So I hope you didn't miss that. But inshallah, we're hoping to continue that today.
Yeah, we're actually continuing it with.
Yep.
We haven't actually introduced our dear guest, Ibrahim Al-Ansari. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you guys doing today?
Alhamdulillah. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you this morning?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, good.
Alhamdulillah. Mullah Ali is a bit quiet today. Are you tired this morning?
No. I'm good. I'm just putting my thoughts together because from our last couple of episodes, we spoke about again a lot of aspects when it comes to the du'as associated with the beginning of the month, and then we looked into Ziyad Ashura. Yeah. We ended last episode with, if the viewers remember, with Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, and we very briefly touched upon his role within Ziyarat Ashura. Essentially, our topic last episode was around association and disassociation. So today we're going to focus more along the lines of the end of Ziyad Ashura, where inshallah. Actually there's a sujood part. Yeah. So I want to know much more about that. Yeah. Me and Zara. We also want to know about Imam Zain al-Abidin's role, because you mentioned that actually the Ziyarah was written by Imam Zain al-Abidin, and the reason why that's significant is because he was actually involved within Karbala. Yes. So tell us a bit more about his significant role when it comes to Ziyad Ashura.
So Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi afdal salatu wassalam, one thing we realize about the way that he worked as an imam in regards to the rest is that he was specifically known for his du'as. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Ali, of course, with the political stances, Imam Hassan carrying that on, Imam Hussein and known for the battle, etc. Imam Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq known to initiate the school of Ahlul Bayt, etc. until you go to the rest of the Imams. Imam Zain al-Abidin was known for the du'as. Therefore we see that he teaches his Shia. He teaches his Shia through the du'as. Right. Because the caliphate at that time was, and the oppression that was going on at that time is unbelievable. To the extent where, you know, Yazid, he was 3 years caliph. He was a caliph for 3 years. Yeah. The first year he kills Imam Hussein. The second year or the third year, the second year, he attacks Medina. Yeah. And specifically the Hashimis. The third year, he attacks the Kaaba by burning it. This is his 3-year caliphate, by the way, and this is why we mentioned before, because someone like this, Imam Hussein, from his actions, he saw that in his heart was not cleanliness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, alayhi afdal salatu wassalam, it was difficult for him to actually go out and to preach and to do all of these things. Instead, what he did was teach us through his supplications. This specific ziyarah, yes, it is visiting Imam Hussein. Yes, it is sending our salams to Imam Hussein. But there are amazing lessons that we find from it. Amazing lessons we find in it. And one of which we discussed in the last episode. And we talked very briefly about wilaya and bara'ah. And the thing is, because we had such short time, But if you remember, we picked literally specific words, and these specific words, there was so much to talk about, because that was the style of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Every single sentence he mentions, there is something specific about it. So one thing about Imam Zain al-Abidin and his role in this ziyarah is not only that he taught us how to send our salams to the Imam. So this is another beautiful thing, where the infallibles, they teach us how to approach the infallibles. So one thing is he taught us how to approach him. Another thing, he taught us some very important lessons. And the third thing that he mentions in this ziyarah, and that he teaches very specifically, is the mourning for Imam Hussein. And asking Allah for reward on your mourning for Imam Hussein. And the sorrow that he holds in his heart, to show the amazingness of what actually happened. And I think that's just a very quick summary of how the ziyarah went. Yes, sorry.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So you've chosen an excerpt of the ziyarah, is it? And it's towards the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the actual very end of the ziyarah.
Okay, so if you'd like to Bismillah recite, and then we can...
So of course, towards the end of the ziyarah, اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. It is recommended to go into sujood. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Excellent. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Excellent recitation. Thank you so much. I'd love to find out, from your perspective in terms of the sujood, why is it actually there, and who introduced it?
This sujood and the act of sujood. If you remember in the first episode, we talked about how dua is direct conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we have specific positions in which we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So firstly, in salah, we are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence, in qunut in salah, we tend to have closer conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we've got Salat al-Ghufayla, for example, which is recommended to pray between Salat al-Maghrib and Isha. And in that specific salah, and you do your qunut, you ask for all your needs. We've got Salatul Layl. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be of those who pray it. We've got Salatul Layl. In that, you mentioned 40 people in that specific qunut. And that, because prayer, you get closer. Then in the act of prayer, the closest position you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the act of sujood. Therefore, this direct conversation you are having with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closest in the act of sujood. And we realize that in this specific ziyarah, when it comes to the sujood, the dua is very specific. Firstly, O Allah, praise to you and praise of the ever thankful to you, who glorify you whatever comes to pass. praises for Allah for my deep felt intense grief. So firstly, you're praising Allah and you're thanking Him for whatever has happened. And we see this even with Sayyidah Zainab, salamullahi alayha. When she sees Imam Hussein in the state he was, she turns around and thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is very important. This is a lesson given to us by Imam Sajjad.
Absolutely.
Thank Allah in all situations. And then it's even more beautiful. Oh Allah, make available for me the recommendations of Hussein the day I present myself before you. Meaning, oh Allah, grant me his intercession. Grant me Imam Hussein's intercession. And let me stand firm in safety before you on account of my sincere attachment with Hussein, along with him and his companions who sacrificed everything they had for Imam Hussein, peace be upon him.
SubhanAllah.
So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that sujood to come closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala firstly, to always thank Him, and then to be on the status of who? The companions of Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein says what about his companions? ما علمت أهل بيت كأهل بيتي. I did not know of a holy house, of a household, just like my household. ولا أصحاب كأصحابي. And no companions like my companions. They were the best of companions, the companions of Imam Hussein. They literally gave away everything they had for the sake of religion.
I think it's interesting that Imam Sajjad, who is very well known for his act of sujood, his act of, like you said, you mentioned his du'as, and teaching us in that way, that he's ended the ziyarah with sujood.
Yes.
And
Definitely.
actually, absolutely. And when you read the ziyarah from his eyes and the way that he's saying his gratitude to Allah, and at the beginning that you recited, Allah condemn and damn the first tyrant justly and wrongfully usurp the rights of those belong to Muhammad and the children of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and bring curse to those after him who followed in his footsteps. So again, it's disassociation.
Yes, dissociation. It's throughout the whole ziyarah he teaches us how to dissociate ourselves, and he mentions specifics in that. So he mentions those who oppressed the Ahlul Bayt, those who, it doesn't say just those who went in war against them. No, he also says whoever followed them in this war.
Exactly.
So that's very specific as well, and that is still to go. Just like I mentioned last episode, that is still to be here. So those who think it is okay for whatever happened on that day, dissociate yourself from these people.
I think the most fascinating thing is that, when you mentioned that, each of the imams did their tabligh or did their preaching in their own specific way, and there's a whole book library, as we can call it, from Imam Sajjad specifically. It's under the guise of supplications, but it's actually the lessons, the tenets, the actual real teachings of Islam through supplications.
Definitely.
which kind of, you hit two birds with one stone. Not only do you get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you also learn lessons about Islam as a whole.
Definitely.
which is absolutely
and
fantastic.
the beauty of his collection of his du'as is that it's so universal, that how much he teaches us the etiquette of, like you were saying in in another morning, that how we're meant to have etiquette to speak towards Allah. I mean, Dua Kumail is one of those that teaches us. But you can't just, so sometimes people, when we have this conversation, said, I just can't connect to Allah. And yet, when even to my non-Shia friends, I can give a dua from this collection, say, recite this, and I always hear that this dua is just so deep and so meaningful, and subhanAllah,
it has so much meanings to it. And that's the thing with the du'as from Imam Sajjad. Even when we look at Dua bi Hamza al-Thamali, which is also by Imam Sajjad, the teachings in that dua, unbelievable.
It's amazing.
And the way he allows himself to actually give you the supplication while giving you lessons even about the afterlife. He teaches you about what happens in the grave. He teaches about how your soul leaves your body. And then he talks about your state in that specific. So he's describing it. He's teaching you how it's happened, and he allows it to be taught in such a specific way where you connect with the dua and really feel deep inside that change.
To the extent, actually, because you mentioned, for example, sujood is one of the parts of how to really get closest to Allah. Within dua, not only is it taught the teachings of Islam and how to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but even as a position, what you should do, every single step you need to take in order to get close to Allah. So essentially, we don't have a reason not to get close to Allah, because everything is out there in front of us. And actually, what's very interesting is in Dua Kumail, there's a specific instruction as to how to get close to Allah, by when the dua says, فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي. That's
Yes.
a direct act, like that's a direct, it's like not like a request, but like this is what you're now supposed to do
Yes.
physically.
Yes.
So now you're supposed to, raise your head towards the sky, because that's, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then on top of that, raise your hands in dua. So it's actually saying physically this is what you should be doing,
Yes.
as well as this is what you should be saying.
Definitely.
So
it's beautiful.
It's
The way
really,
the
really
Imams
nice.
put it for us is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Very
And
blessed,
this is
yeah.
a blessing that we have, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us steadfast on this, inshallah. Because like we know,
Okay.
you never know how it can turn out, and
Yeah.
therefore one of the main du'as that is always recommended by our scholars, that is recommended, نسأل الله حسن العاقبة, to keep us steadfast on these beautiful teachings of the Imams.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we've got
Thank
time
you
for
very
it.
much.
It's flown by
Jazakumullah khair.
again.
Yeah.
Shall I pray for a blessed day for you? And,
Jazakumullah khair.
shall I-
Likewise to the both
Thank
of
you
you and
so
your
much.
families, inshallah.
So moving on to the next part of the show. After this, I'll be actually taking a deep dive into the emotional aspect of Muharram and Safar, in the sense that I'll be speaking to different poets and reciters as to their experiences when it comes to Ashura and Arba'in, verses of love, after some extracts of the holy city of Karbala during Muharram and Safar.
Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to Barakatuh. Tonight is a night that the city of Karbala mourns the eldest son of Imam Hussein, mourns the one who was chopped into pieces in the plains of Karbala. Tonight Karbala mourns Ali ibn Hussein, Ali al-Akbar. Now, the youth of Karbala, the sons of Karbala, like every night, have gone out with their chants, with their remembrance, with pride. But today, they carry the body of Ali al-Akbar. They carry the body of Ali al-Akbar around the city, through the shrine of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and through the shrine of Imam Hussein, where they will again conclude with a majlis of matam, inshaAllah. This is Maqam of Ali al-Akbar. This is the exact point where he fell, where he was murdered by the tyrannical army of Yazid. Rahmatullah alayhi. This is where all the Zuwar gather to mourn Ali al-Akbar. They come here every night to Latam. They crawl to the shrine, to the monument of where Ali al-Akbar fell. As you can see behind me, it is very, very emotional. It is very spiritual to be just in the vicinity of this monument. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمحت بذلك فغويت به. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين.
Welcome back, dear viewers of IMAM HUSSEIN TV, on another episode of Morning Barakah. As you've just seen, the scenes in Karbala are now reaching towards the day of Ashura itself. And as you know, and if you don't know, Muharram in Karbala is a special occasion because the locals themselves, they commemorate Ashura in a very specific way. And that's every single day. And this is probably the same when it comes to the whole Shia population, when it comes to the 10 days, each night is commemorated to a specific character of the massacre of Karbala. For example, on night 6, the Iraqis will commemorate a certain character. On night 7 or night 8, for example, is the day of the Qasim, the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And so each day within Karbala is a specific commemoration, so it's something very different. So within the night of the 8th, and to commemorate Al-Qasim ibn al-Hassan, you'll see procession after procession of young children or a youth being adorned with armor, as if to represent the Qasim who was actually on the battlefield, telling his uncle, I want to go and help the cause of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I want to help the cause of my father and yourself. And this is the message of Al-Qasim alayhi salam. And so what they do is they adorn these youths with armor and helmets, and it's a procession where they commemorate the son of Al-Qasim. Or on any other day, for example, it could be the nights of Ali al-Akbar, and that's another type of commemoration. So as you've seen from the scenes, Karbala becomes much more populated, many more visitors come to visit Karbala. So it's definitely reaching towards the day of Ashura in Karbala. So that's what you've just seen on your screens, and this part of the program, as always, is the verses of love, where we take a bit of a deep dive into the poetry and the recitation aspect of Ashura, connecting with Imam Hussein alayhi salam through tears and through emotions. And of course, I'm delighted to be with my guest once again, Nouri Sardar. Many thanks for joining us on the show. Assalamu alaikum. Nouri, we touched upon a very interesting subject last episode. And I wanted to delve deep into it. And for our viewers, we spoke about Revival, which is a track that you released last year, and essentially it was different to many other tracks about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And something that you touched upon last week was it reflects what you write, reflects who you are at the time. And your initial days of writing poetry was very traditional. It was an adaptation of the Arabic style or the Iraqi style of lamentation, and so that's how you would write. So there was a phase in your life where you wanted to change it up a bit and really try and reach the non-Muslims. So you spoke about writing poetry about Grenfell Tower, and just for the viewers who don't know, Grenfell Tower is a building that caught fire in London.
So basically,
you know more about this than I do.
It's a council building. In America, they call it like projects, but it's a skyscraper, and it was in one of the richest boroughs in London. And basically, to make it look better to the rich, for the sake of the rich area, they put a plastic cladding all over the building. And what happened was there was a fire, and because of the cladding, the whole building caught fire when it should have been contained. And just veering off very quickly, the reason I was so affected by it is because I lived in a very similar building. I grew up in a very similar building, which also had cladding on it.
Oh wow!
So if that had happened in my building, we lived 20th floor, furthest from the exit. So if that happened in my building, there was no chance we would have made it out alive. So it really just, and it's the whole thing is just the whole, it's an example of the real face of austerity in the UK.
Exactly. So basically there was an issue
Yeah.
which you didn't feel comfortable with, and you wanted to voice your concern, your opinion, and you used poetry, your skills, your techniques in order to deliver that message, right? So there was a phase in your life where it went a bit away from traditional, went into a new realm, did you say? Was it like a new realm of delivery?
It was scary for me because, you know, the typical delivery of poetry that happens in the West is spoken word poetry, you know, and that's what I was trying to
How
get
different
into.
is that to the traditional, by the way?
I think it's the words traditional and modern are I think terms I disagree with, but the best way to compare it, spoken word poetry, it's very, it's closer, I would say, it's hard to kind of define it. But I think if you look at the typical poetry about, from the...
Could you give me an example?
So from the Iraqi and the Iranian perspective, everything is based on structure, right? There's a very significant structure to the poem.
Okay.
Whereas spoken word poetry is all about free flow. It's
Right.
about how it sounds, it's about wordplay.
Can you give me an example of that?
I can't give you an example. But I don't like to use this term, but I would say it's closer to rap than it is, you know, to traditional poetry. But it's not rap itself, obviously. It's just about. It's
just the way it's delivered.
It's kind of the Western way of standing up, and you know, in Iraq when they stand up and shout Hosat and stuff, it's the Western way of doing that.
Okay.
You know, you stand up and you throw lines of poetry out.
Right. So we've reached Muharram, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep recapping from last episode. So we've now reached Muharram. You've spoken about some very modern topical issues in the West, but you've also got a history of traditional, very traditional aspect of Karbala and Ashura. What happened, and why was revival created?
I was, like I said before, I just wanted to write something about Imam Hussein that reminded people, you know, to look deep into why they're commemorating Imam Hussein and what kind of a person it makes them. So what I touched upon in that was like, if you're going to remember Imam Hussein, make sure that you, in your life, you stand up for social justice. When you see someone oppressed, when you see someone being bullied, when you see someone suffering domestic violence, even on very simplistic terms, you know, with your prayers, you know, make sure you don't steal money. It was basically like, it was quite simplistic in the fact that I was just saying, like, if you love Imam Hussein, don't do this. If you love Imam Hussein, don't do that, but in a more of a poetic way. And it's funny because, like, at the time, I remember I was telling you that I was scared about what the reaction would be to release my first spoken piece of Muslim ban. When I was releasing this, I was completely, like, terrified.
Really?
I had no idea.
Why?
Because I had never done anything like it, especially when it comes to Imam Hussein.
Yeah.
There was a use of very light music in it, which I wasn't sure how people were going to react to either, to be frank.
I know all about that.
Yeah, you know about that. And also, you know, it's just, it's the first, you're stepping into unknown territory. And the thing is, I wasn't completely, and I'm still not comfortable with it either. Because
you seem like it's very natural to you. Do you think it's not much of a difference? I'll tell you why. Because from a recitation point of view, there's a massive difference in how you project your voice or how you manipulate the sound coming out of your vocal cords when it comes to East and West.
Yeah.
And there's a major difference. So I can sit and recite for you Eastern melodies from now until tomorrow, but when it comes to the West,
it's hard for you.
I don't know how to deliver it.
No, it's hard for me too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the thing is,
but is it the same there?
Speaking critically, if I look at that, it's not a good spoken word poem. I'll be very frank with you. It's not. The flow is a bit, you know, it doesn't really flow properly. If I was to write it again, I'll write it completely differently.
Really?
Even topically, look, it came from a place of uncertainty. It came from a place of, you know, am I really taking on the lessons of Imam Hussein? And that's what I put into the poem. And that's why what I was putting out there was uncertainty. And that's why I was worried about how people would react. Alhamdulillah, I'm very blessed that, you know, it seemed to impact people. There were people that came back and said, you know what, I'm rethinking my relationship with Imam Hussein, which is what I was going for. Which is why, to be honest, the only reason why I don't hate it so much, because when I look back at it, look, I was in a place in my life where I was trying not to be negative. I was trying to be, and I'm still trying to be very positive and not look at, you know, the negative. But I felt the poem was quite negative in that saying, you know, you're going to do this, fine, but look at this. And it almost tells you to look at the glass. It almost shows you a glass that's half empty, but then by saying that you should look at the glass half full. if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when I look back at it, I do have some regrets.
I was just about to ask, any regrets?
Yeah, those are my regrets. I mean, I think if I was to rewrite it again, I would be much more metaphorical. I think it was too specific. It spoke about things like, making sure that if you mourn Imam Hussein, you remember your prayer, which is very important. But I think it just felt a bit out of place in regards to what I was going for. I was looking to revive the relationship that we have with Imam Hussein. And
you're, just to be devil's advocate here, but you're telling me that the purpose of that, forget the personal point of view of you, where you are at the time and the negativity, you just wanted to release that, but you're telling me that you wanted to send a message to the West at large.
No.
So looking beyond Shiism.
So this is the point. It was something written toward our community.
So this is specifically our
at a time where I wanted to impact the wider community.
Right.
Do you understand? So and it was basically, if I was to translate that poem or what I was going for, and it sounds really, really messed up to say, but we were saying to the community, what you're doing, think about what you're doing, you're messing up, fix up. That's what the poem was trying to say. And that very message, just by me translating it, it sounds very uneasy. It's not very nice to say. And that's why I don't like it.
Right.
But thankfully, people looked at that and they said, you know what, I do need to rethink my relationship with Imam Hussein. I think that, if I was to do it again, it would be from a very positive perspective. The flow would be completely different. And the topic would be quite different. But I'm glad that I did it. It's a learning curve. Sometimes you just need to put stuff out there, just to see, just to ask yourself if you could do it, and just to get that off your chest. I don't think I would do anything like it again. I would definitely tackle Imam Hussein through spoken word poetry, for sure. But in terms of the topic and what I was going for, I would never do anything like that again.
So what's the next step now?
So the next step, inshallah, for these 10 days, we've worked on an album called The Karbala Narrative, with the whole idea of that it's going to be a mix of spoken word and some recitation here and there. But the whole idea is just to ask ourselves what the narrative of Karbala means in today's society, what it means to us today. It's a much more metaphorical look. It's what I should have done for revival, and it's just going to look at the narrative of Karbala from different perspectives. And basically the whole theme of the album is, what is the relevance of the narrative of Karbala?
What do you mean by narrative?
So the actual story. It's a story that's 1,000 years old. What relevance does it have today? What does it mean to me today? What does it mean to non-Muslims? What does it mean to us in our community? And the whole idea is just to tackle that through different tracks, and that's what I'm going for.
If you can just put two or three ideas together, what would it mean?
So
when you say narrative, and you say, what does the whole story of Karbala mean to us today?
Obviously it means a plethora of things, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm going for with this is to pick it up and say what we should learn from it is that we have to look at the social justice in our society and make sure we implement that, make sure we tackle social injustice.
So we're now talking about the society, not the community now, because you've already
done
exactly.
It's an outward-looking album. It's not anybody. Of course, there are some tracks as well that speak about our relationship with Imam Hussein, as are typical. But the general theme of the album is to ask, what is the relevance of the narrative on the wider world?
Yeah. What topics have you got in mind? So
I
know there's different aspects. You've got, for example, the story of Hur, and that's the story of someone apologizing to you, maybe accepting it, or repentance,
thing is, that's very
changing.
I think that's very that's too specific. I'm going for very metaphorical. Obviously, at the time of recording this, I'm still in the process of writing and making it, so I won't be able to comment completely on it. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I just want to put it out there, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't, kind of thing. But at the same time, just generally the whole thing is looking at the injustice in our society in a very metaphorical way, not specific way, not saying this happens, but just generally there is social injustice in our society, and we have to remember that the narrative of Karbala was there to teach us to fight that in any way that we can, and to teach us to revive ourselves. It is basically what revival should have been, and hopefully that should be out now, inshallah.
Well, look, moving on, I guess we will talk more about this in the next episodes, but English poetry has gone through a lot, hasn't it? It's gone through a lot. It's gone through a lot of changes over the years, from the quality of the writing to the structure to the outreach, to its significance within programs and communities. Well, I mean, what's changed over the years from your side?
So I think, as we've been saying, it's evolved from. I think you look at English poetry, it's got such a wide array of let's call it cultures or different types of species. You know, you have poetry that's written for nohas. You have poetry that's written for a spoken word. You have poetry that's written to stand up in the mosque and recite. Looking at so it's very hard to say where it's been, but from my perspective of my journey, I remember when we started journeying to America and seeing all those people that are kind of copying us in terms of the way we recite and the way we write poetry. I think that was then. Now I think people are growing. I think the one criticism I always had, I was very flattered that people would kind of take my style and use it, but my style was good for me. I think it's very important for everyone to find what kind of style suits them, how they enjoy writing, and use it. And I think now this happened.
The great thing, sorry, just to cut you, the great thing about English poetry within the within Shia world is that there's no set form of what's right and what's wrong.
Exactly.
So to fill that void, what you've done is you've set a precedent in saying, look, when it comes to English poetry and it comes to standing up, not reciting it and giving spoken word poetry, I think everyone just goes, okay, I'm just going to do what Nouri does because that's what we know to be English poetry. Otherwise,
I think it's a great stepping stone. It's a great foundation. But what I'm seeing now is that people are exploding and blossoming and doing poetry from all sorts of angles relating to Imam Hussein. I think that's just been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. It's going to continue to be an amazing journey. It's just amazing to see it grow and blossom.
Where do you see it in the next couple of years?
Can't predict these things, really, can you? I think for me now personally, I'm diversifying. I'm still writing nohas or latmiyas and poetry that fits that kind of structure. I'm looking to do more spoken word things that tackle non-Shia related subjects, things that are very dear to me. Just various different topics, both in terms of social justice and general day-to-day issues that we face with, that we tackle, and then also I think social media is the new platform medium to share poetry. You have all these Insta poets that share their poetry on social media. I think that's something I'm trying to dive into as well, just to include art and stuff with couplets. I think that's very important to share poetry. And all you're doing really is just you're chasing the times. Right, and then you've got this talent, you've got your talent, and we're just trying to find the best way with the time to push that talent out. I think that's what everyone should do.
It's gone the days, like, for example, albums and CDs and stuff like that. Or
CDs, physical CDs, yes. I think there's still space for albums. I think on streaming services, iTunes and stuff like that. And ultimately, all we can do, or anyone can do that writes poetry, or any advice that I can give, is just to try your best, just to push out your art. I think I'm going to, one thing I've promised myself is I'm going to stop making such a big deal out of it. I feel like, before when we used to release an album, we used to have a trailer out, like it's a movie or something. These days, I'm just putting something together, I'm putting it out there. People like it, they like it. They don't. I'm putting it out there because it's something I want to speak about, And that's the beauty of art, It can fly, it can not fly, but ultimately, as long as it's true to you and true to who you are, that's what's most important.
Brilliant. Well, look, I mean, there's many more that we can speak about when it comes to the revolution of English poetry, where it's going to be in the next 5 or 6 years. But what significance do you feel like it's going to have on the community itself? Because we've seen a shift when it comes to 20 years ago up until now. Like, for example, we've always seen the usual structure of a commemoration program is Quran, speaker, and then the reciter. That's the usual. But now, with the added, value of English poetry, it's now always it's an integral part of a program. So that's what we see now. Where do you see that sort of developing over the next couple of years? Do you even see it developing?
The thing is, I think poetry will always be a very integral part of our commemorations. You look at our history. The message of Imam Hussein survived, I would say, through the commemoration, and the service for our scholars, but in the commemoration you look at poetry. So Imam Hussein ultimately survived through poetry, so through poetic storytelling, through latmiya as well, and all of that. So it's always going to be a very integral part of our lifestyle and our culture. I mean, it's funny because if you think about your first memory of Imam Hussein, I think about my first memory, and any child that you ask, what was your first memory of Imam Hussein, they'll say, you know what, I remember a majlis, I remember a poem, I remember a latmiya, and what's amazing for me and you is that, when we were growing older and we think about our first memory of Imam Hussein, we think about people like Basim, and people think about, other Pakistani reciters. But what's amazing is that now kids are growing up and thinking, you know what, my first memory of majlis was Nuri reciting a poem. My first memory of majlis was Ali reciting latmiya or a track that Ali did. And that's a massive, massive honor.
By the way, I wanted to allude to that as well, because do you feel like we're not catering for the masses within our community, especially when it comes to the next generation, of teaching them the importance of the traditional aspect of Imam Hussein as-salam before we teach them the wider aspect of the society? Isn't that more important?
Thing is, like for me, again, like this is why I haven't diversed from still writing latmiyas and nohas. I'm not transforming into something else. I'm diversifying.
Yeah, but you're not releasing any tracks or albums.
No. For example, the album that I'm doing now, I do want to put in like 1 or 2 latmiya tracks, because I feel like these still ultimately speak to people. But I'm just trying to evolve it, just trying to push what I can. And ultimately, even if I'm not there to do it, if you're not there to do it, there'll still be people coming forward to push forward English latmiyas and stuff. So, and I think it will always be a part of our culture. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, whatever language they're speaking, they'll do it. They'll still be doing poetry.
Die down. Yeah, it's never going to die down. I just feel like, because you're more or less the front runner when it comes to English poetry, and alhamdulillah, people do copy your style, and I feel like if you don't do something that's going to be groundbreaking in the future, there needs to be someone else that steps up to the plate.
The thing is, if you're asking me what I see myself reverting to what I was doing originally in the next 5-10 years. So ultimately, we speak about diversifying, we speak about impacting the white community, but the bread and butter of it, and this is very as an antithesis to everything I was saying. But the bread and butter of it, the thing that touches you the most, the thing that will always be the most important, is standing up in a majlis and reciting a few verses poetry about Imam Hussein. That's all that matters ultimately. Because that's what's going to have the biggest impact on people. And I think that will always be there. Again, like I said, whether me and you are not there,
that's always going to
it's always going to, Allah's going to push someone else up. As you're aware, Allah pushes someone up, He pushes someone down. And I'm sure He will ensure that I'm sure that He will ensure that the message of Imam Hussein survives through poetry forever, inshallah.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I really want to, because I get, for example, parents coming up to me and saying, oh, like my child, recently listened to this track, and when they name the track, I'm like, oh my God, that was like 5 years ago. And I feel really guilty because, and we'll allude to this as well when it comes to the next episodes, and essentially when it comes to our creative processes of doing poetry recitations, actually physically going out there and doing the tracks. It takes time, takes effort.
But it's a duty we have, right?
It's a duty we have. I feel like, oh my God, I need to release something quickly, and not because I've been dilly-dallying with the modern aspect of it, because I told you from my perspective, from a recitation perspective, it's very, very difficult to train your voice to sing in the Western melody.
Yeah.
So I've been sort of trying to get in between both and really trying to identify what's good for me.
Yeah.
But even then, I try you try to do something modern because you feel like you want to reach the wider community, but at the same time you feel like you're missing out on.
So I mean that's why I think the most important thing is to diversify rather than transform, right? You can be a Sami Yusuf but also be a Basim at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think one mistake I made over the years was always thinking that for example, I thought, if I'm a poet, I can't be anything else. I can't chase my passions. I can't, for example, look into filmmaking. I can't look into documentary filmmaking. I can't look into producing. I can't be a senior editor of a magazine because I'm a poet. But ultimately, you become stronger when you diversify, when you chase your passions. So I think that's very important.
Yeah. So look, we've covered everything when it comes to, of course, within 15 minutes you can't really cover the whole topic, but essentially the future of English recitations and where we see it in the next couple of years. And I think the main message for me is not to change everything, but just diversify a bit, just so that we can sort of
the thing is,
cover every aspect.
Don't let go of what you're good at.
Yeah.
Right, and gamble it for something else.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
I think it's always good to diversify and just keep your strengths and make new strength elsewhere.
Brilliant. Next time Noor is on the show, we'll be speaking about creative processes and what this means to him, maybe even to myself as well. But Noor, thank you so much for your time once again. After the break, you'll be seeing Dear Masuma once again with Zara Kazmi and Masuma Jafar, and they're going to be speaking about repentance and specifically the character of Hur. Over to you, Zara.
Mashallah, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. We have Sister Masuma with us. Assalamu alaikum, Sister. Inshallah, you're well.
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
So we have another question. I've written in, I feel I have sinned so much in my life that this has had a great impact on my depression. Do you have any advice on what I could possibly do during this time? And obviously we do emphasize on one of the nights of Hazrat Hur and his repentance, and I think this kind of ties quite nicely in with that. And what would you say to somebody that feels that sort of?
I think it's again this whole concept of feeling hopelessness. I think that in itself is a sin. We need to have a balance between the fear of sinning and the hope of being forgiven. And I think we can't go from one extreme to the other. It's funny how shaitan works. What he does is when you're about to sin, he makes you think about God's forgiveness. Oh, God's all forgiving and don't worry about it. And then when you've actually done the sin, then he says, oh, you're so bad and God's never going to forgive you. And, and he makes you sort of fear God so much, where it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
It's like when you're about to sin, you should be fearing God and thinking, I can't do this. And when, if you have sinned, then you should be, asking for God's forgiveness because he is all forgiving. And I think as long as the forgiveness is, sought in a sincere way, and the whole concept of tawbah is put into motion, where you're not actually just saying sorry, but actually, first of all, actually feeling remorse for what you've done, regretting what you've done, asking for forgiveness, righting the wrong that you may have done, ensuring that you've put into place things that will stop you from doing that wrong again. So, is it a place that you go to which pulls you towards that sin? Is it people that that pull you towards that sin? What is it that's making you do that sin? And actually reflecting on that so that you can actually then put into place things which will stop you from doing that sin again. I think that's really, really important. So it's not just, oh, I'm sorry, let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to have actually felt that, because sadness and
I suppose
remorse.
it's knowing, although we can never know Allah, but who are you sinning against? If you actually had that concept and if we had that in our minds, we would maybe perhaps, like you said, put that stop in before we committed something. That who am I going to be showing my arrogance to? That I'm sinning, but it's it's such a deviant act for us to do.
I think like when people talk about fearing Allah, to me it's the fear of letting him down rather than fearing him. It's about sort of, he's given me so much. How could I, how can I do that? Like you're saying, that concept of, who he is and what he's done for me. And it's like, how can I, it's that concept of, it's the same sort of principle that we have with our parents. It's like, we don't want to disappoint them because they've done so much for us. So it's the same sort of concept. It's like, I don't want to disappoint him. I want to live up to the potential that he's given me. And that stops you from then going down that route.
Yeah. No, I think also that's a beautiful point, and it just reminded me of, so for instance, as parents, that we keep showing our mercy, even when our child is rude, or comes back and says something, I'm not going to do this, and we just overlook it, and you think Allah is so much more merciful.
It says 70 times more He loves you than your mother.
And they won't, and Allah will not give us because we're certainly not deserving of His blessings, but because of His mercy. And but in terms of sort of forgiveness, do you think, what were the lessons that, for instance, Hazrat Hur? I mean, it's such a
so again, if you look at the way he did it, it's beautiful. It's like he didn't just say, "Okay, I made a mistake. Let's move on." Yeah. So first of all, that like actually thinking it through, reflecting on what he'd done. I mean, you think about it. It's like he was the one who stopped Imam from going to Kufa. He's the one who led Imam to Karbala and made him stop there and camp there. So it's it's due to him that the whole thing initiated initially. When he was doing it, he never thought it would actually end up in a battle. He thought it would be resolved somehow or other. And when he realized that it was going to end up in a battle, and that, you know, the enemy wanted the blood of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that's when he sort of stepped back and thought, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't, you know. And then to actually, you know, I mean, being the commander, again, he had that status, he had everything going for him. And, you know, he wasn't scared, he was a warrior. And then to actually sort of take that moment out to self-reflect and think, what is it that I'm doing? And all the way through, if you look at his meetings with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he knew the status of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he knew the status of Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, because again, you know, he says, if your mother wasn't Bibi Fatima, I would not, you know, I would say something as well.
But I think before he says that, it's what I love about that is the way that the Imam knew what would press his button and, you know, get that real hur out of you that is inside. That was,
and make him realize that, you know, I know all of these things.
Exactly.
And again, I think that's really important, that alhamdulillah, you know, if I already know the status of my Imam, I know the status of these holy personalities, the Ahlul Bayt and so forth, then there is hope for me. And that's why there was hope for her, you know. And the fact that he spent that time self-reflecting, thinking about it, you know, he was walking up and down, and when someone asked him, he said, I feel like I'm between heaven and hell. And it was literally that. If he continued in the path he was going to go to, you know, he was going towards, he was going to go towards hell. He had to make a huge U-turn and you know, do something about what he'd done. And when he realized, you know, what he'd done was wrong, immediately he took action to right the wrong. So, you know, actually not only asking Allah's forgiveness, but asking the forgiveness of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Spiritually, that is a massive jihad within us, isn't it? So it's the bigger jihad is the one inside. I mean, he was, as you said, the commander, had the physical strength, the physical power, the physical personnel. But when it came to it, the biggest strength and test for him was his own self. That what do I do? Do I turn around? And that spiritual strength that came out, he made the right decision. And so obviously, like you said, that he's then going back to Imam Hussein.
And asking for his forgiveness because he'd wronged him. Asking for Bibi Zainab alayhi salam's forgiveness again because he'd wronged her as well. So, you know, he's actually righting the wrong that he's done. And then you see that he wants to, you know, actually compensate for the wrong that he's done. And he said, I want to be the first one that goes out to the battle. I want to be the one who gives up my life first. And again, so it's not, oh, sorry, let's, you know, it's like I give the example of, you know, if I've sat here and I've cleaned up my house and my husband comes home and he's drinking his coffee and he spills it and he says, oh, sorry, and then he gets up and walks off. It's like, where's the sincerity in that? Sorry, if you're sorry, you would clean it up. Again, you know, you see the sincerity in who's, you know, asking for forgiveness. He's the first one to actually go out, and the way he talks to the, you know, to the army that he was the commander of, it's like, you know, trying to get them to realize what they're doing is wrong was amazing. It, you know, again, it shows that spiritual power that came from within.
So do you think, so we were saying in a couple of series ago, shows ago, that it's the 40-day period, and it's when we take we can take an opportunity to change habits. So do you think the first of, you know, Muharram is a good opportunity to really write down or contemplate on what we are perhaps sinning? So this person saying, I've sinned a lot in my life. I don't know if they're still sinning, or they haven't obviously explained that. And has that caused the depression? Or maybe the depression is because of the guilt. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know about this situation. But assuming that is that hopelessness is there, and you think, oh, you know, I'm just doomed. And I think even in that, there's a beauty, isn't there? That they are feeling that low in themselves. Allah is obviously clearly trying to wake them up and say, it's okay, I'm there for you. You've got this opportunity to come and repent in these
But then
holy
realizing
months.
that Allah doesn't abandon you.
No.
So, you know, if you look at Imam Sajjad alayhi salam's, you know, whispered du'as of for the repenter, and he talks about the door of Tawbah being open, and he says, Ya Allah, what excuse does anyone have not to walk through that door? It's not even that you have to find the key or knock on the door, it's open. You just have to walk through it. So it's, again, you know, when I feel that low, when I feel that depression, and, you know, I feel that sadness because of the sins that I've committed, that's great. But then let's do something about it. Don't just, you know, just dwelling on that self, you know, and sort of wallowing in my own self-pity, because that's how shaitan gets to you. So yes, once I feel that's the remorse, but then I need to then take it to the next step and actually sort of, you know, do the istighfar, right the wrong that I've done, and actually think about, okay, so like you're saying, maybe write down the sins that I've committed. You know, one of the things that is very disliked by God is actually to share your sins with others. So, you know, God doesn't want you to tell others what sins you've committed, because, again, He doesn't want you to...
covering you,
yeah, He's protecting you. He doesn't want, you know, other people to think badly of you.
Yeah.
And he, you know, He actually covers your sins. So again, talking to Allah, telling Him what sins you've committed and asking for His forgiveness, and then righting the wrong, and maybe
it's not like He doesn't know. Obviously, He knows better than us. We forget our sins, but you know, obviously everything's in His knowledge. But it's more for ourselves, isn't it? That, you know, acknowledge what we've done and say. And
that's why it's so important to, I think, self-reflect every night, so that you actually don't forget the sins that you've committed. Because again, if you commit sin upon sin upon sin, then what you do is actually, you know, close yourself off to the guidance of Allah. It's like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, you know, the fact that He puts a seal on your hearts, you know, and on their eyes and on their ears. It's you know, it's not that He's putting it; it's the system that He's put into place. So if you continuously sin, then there will be veils and seals that are placed, and although the guidance is there, you won't see it. You won't see it. You won't get anything from it. So it's really important to self-reflect every night before we go to bed, to think about what is it that I, you know, did which I need to sort of ask for forgiveness for, and what is it good that I did that I need to sort of thank Allah for, you know, being able to fulfill that goodness in my life today.
Absolutely, and I think you know, these are like we were saying before, that these are opportunities for us to, you know, to in the month of Muharram, and while we look at Hur as an example, that Hur can be us, that inside of us, that jihad, that we turn our soul around and say, actually, I'm not going to do this sin anymore, I am going to make a difference. And when that temptation is there, to remember that promise you made and say, no, I'm not repeating, I'm not going back down that path where Allah will be, you know, like you said, you're disappointed in yourself, that you've let such a gracious Lord down, that, you know, He's created us for so much. So it's really putting our own boundaries, isn't it? And not to keep expanding, and because we will then become immune to that sin and it will become normal. And sometimes I you know, in conversations you hear people saying, yeah, it's okay, that's just music, it's okay, and you think, how have we got from sort of not listening to it, then it's okay, that's okay, and we will only just get worse, won't we? And it's really to put your restraints on your own soul. Yeah,
and sometimes I think, you know, again, God knows that we need help, and so again He gives us these amazing holy personalities to sort of connect to and sort of ask for their help as well. So you know, it's beautiful the way, you know, again, if you look at how the year is set, it's beautiful. You know, you start off with Muharram, where you connect to human beings, so I can relate to these holy personalities. I can you know, see them as role models and try to connect to them. And then you get my Ramzan, where Allah's saying to you, okay, now you can see what you can achieve, because look at what these holy personalities achieve. Now work on your own self. So in my Ramzan, you're working on your own soul and connecting to Allah. And then when you've done that, then He gives you Hajj, where He says, now you come to me, and I will make you rise, you know, to wondrous places. So it's beautiful how it's journey, it's the journey. It's amazing.
And so if we implemented that, as you're saying so beautifully, that every year, then inshallah we can only raise and get better. But I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much. It's been another enlightening, and inshallah this person can make those changes that they hope to make. And we all have things to improve on, so inshallah we can all dig out that hole inside of us and inshallah make the best improvements. Next up we have Mini Husseinis.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Razia Khassani Karami. I'm here today at a new Husseini. I'll be joining the Majlis and do a bit of interviewing. So come on inside and I'll show you what I'll be doing. The lecturer has the role of teaching us many lessons, from the event of Karbala and the life of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When they mention the stories of the children in Karbala, it shows me that anyone can be a khadim no matter the age.
We will fly it forever. Our home is Karbala, where the youth of the Shia, Hussein's flag is our treasure.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm here with Manhar and he's a lecturer, and I'm going to ask him a few questions how to be a better Mini Husseini. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Good. I want to ask, what made you want to give lectures?
In actual fact, I wanted to give lectures because I feel like all of the lecturers up there are very old. They don't know how to communicate with the youth, with the younger children. So I felt that as a young person, I would communicate more effectively, better with the younger children by giving lectures on things that are relative to us in this world.
How old are you and start giving lectures?
I was around 16 years old.
Why do you recite for Imam Hussein alayhi salam?
There isn't a better service that anyone can give to anyone else other than Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein doesn't need us, we need him. So we recite to get closer to the Ahlul Bayt, and we recite to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Ahlul Bayt. And that's why we recite.
How do you prepare for the Rijali?
So usually I have a topic that I want to talk about, and I have 3 subtopics, and I have those in my head, and in the lecture, number 1, do it, number 2, do it, and obviously I have background preparation and background research.
Can you give me and the many Husseinis a tip about serving Imam Hussein?
I'd say learn about Imam Hussein, learn about his life outside of Karbala, learn about what he was outside of Karbala. Don't limit Imam Hussein to just 10 days. Learn because he lived for 58 years, not 10 days. So learn what he did throughout his life. Inshallah, you serve him the best of service.
Thank you for your time. See you guys next time. Bye.
For every grain of sand.
Thank you to our mini Husseinis. God bless you. It's such a beautiful effort and so refreshing to see such young children participating in mosque activities during these holy nights. So we'd like to welcome you to the fiqh section. So Ali?
Yeah, so we're welcoming Sayyid Muhsin Shah, very own IMAM HUSSEIN TV's Sayyid Muhsin Shah, who's shedding some light when it comes to the jurisprudential aspects of Muharram and Safar. Everything from makruh acts, everything from the mustahab acts, looking at things like azadari, for example, or wearing the black. So we very much appreciate his time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you? Everything okay?
I'm very well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me again.
No, it's our pleasure, and hopefully our viewers like ourselves are benefiting from these discussions, and obviously your perspective on what is makruh, haram, mustahab actions, and they're quite important topics that it's a reminder for people every year. We get used to doing certain things, we're not sure why we do them, and we can forget what we should be and what we shouldn't be doing. So it's a brilliant opportunity for us to revive our belief. And so today we're going to be talking about fasting on the day of Ashura, which can be quite contentious, can't it?
Yeah. So there's a couple of differences of opinion, and there's also a question. I think it's probably beneficial if we just ask the question as a pretext to our conversation. And there was a brother from New Jersey, Jabir, who mentions, dear Sheikh Sayyid, many Muslims around the world, especially from other sects in Islam, and that's quite a key point here, on the day of Ashura, fast to honor the days that Moses and Noah were stopped from drowning. Recently, some Shias have also decided to fast on this day. So what do you think about fasting on the day of Ashura? I think there's a couple of things that we need to consider here. Number one, within the Shia sect and other sects as well. And number two, the historical basis behind that. So, first and foremost, from a Shia perspective and non-Shia perspective, what's your thoughts on that?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So, in regards to the Shia perspective on this, is that our Maraja, majority of our Maraja, and the Maraja at this channel, the spiritual guide of this channel, Sayyid Sadiq Shazi Hafadullah, he says it's makruh to fast on Ashura. And I believe a lot of the Maraja do have this fatwa that it is absolutely makruh, very, very discouraged that do not fast on this day.
Right.
Now, the other schools of thought, or the other jurisprudential schools that we have in Islam, have a different opinion, and they probably say it's very highly recommended to fast on this day.
Has anyone said it's wajib and haram, for example? For example, the other sects, would they say it's wajib to fast on that day? And with the Shia sect on the other side,
to be honest, I have read from some sources in regards to the Sunni school of thought that it was wajib at some point, and then it changed. Now this may be because of a different opinion or different evidences being brought forward. This is why the rule has changed. And for today, the dominant ruling is that it is mustahab. With the Shia school of thought, there are rumors, and I have heard that it was wajib. I grew up believing it was not wajib, haram.
Yes.
I personally grew up believing that it was haram. You're not allowed to. But doing some research, it seems that no, it is actually makruh.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a discussion beforehand, and you were saying that to make something haram, you have to have a very, very strong basis and a very, very strong evidence, dalil from the Quran or from Hadith to support this. And to make something haram to that extent that if you were to do it, you will get punishment and torment for it.
Which is quite big, because fasting is a very, very good act to do.
It comes under ibadat.
So for someone to come and say to actually fast is haram, there needs to be a lot of, as you're saying,
if we do, we look at the Taraweeh, for example, which is also prayer. But for Shia Muslim, it is haram, it is totally forbidden. But we have the hadith and the riwayat of the Rasulullah and the Imam to prove this. There's not much on terms of Ashura to make it haram.
So in terms, they're very two distinct rulings, highly recommended and very discouraged. Now, from my background, surrounded in an area, we're minority Shias, and so news feeds, social media, it's so recommended. And I'm honestly every year astounded by how much our Sunni brothers and sisters are encouraged to fast on this day. And we have the whole discussions every year, why it's not. Is there a historical context, and why is it so important for them and so discouraged for us? What's the
They're the polar opposites.
Absolutely.
Indeed. I mean, to be honest, the reason that they have is to say that on this day, on Ashura, this is when the flood of when Noah built his ark and the actual flood happened. They also say with the what I call the 10 plagues of Moses. One of them, the main I think the main plague would have been the taking of the firstborn, would have happened on that day, and they were saying that this is a day of azar, you could say, as in like torment and calamity comes on this day, and then they used to fast to refrain and to protect themselves from such torment and calamity. And thus the story goes that Rasulullah was asking the Jews, why do you fast on this day? And they were saying that, because of what happened to Noah and what happened to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. And then Rasulullah said that, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he said that I have a greater status than Moses and Noah, and therefore I introduce this into our religion as well, that we should fast on this day as well. That's the riwayah, or that's the reason that the Sunni brothers and sisters that they use to fast on this day. How when it comes to the Shia jurisprudential evidence, it's not strong. That we have nothing like this within our riwayah at all. In fact, it's the opposite. That is makruh to fast on such a day. And I think there is a link towards the Umayyads, because the Umayyads did fast after their so-called victory and killing of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And to do Bara'a, to step away from and disassociate ourselves from the Umayyads, we have purposely not made it makruh and not fasted on this day, as well as showing that even though today other people are continuing this and fasting on this day, we are not going to do it.
So fasting on, I have a couple of questions actually. One is a period between when the Holy Prophet in his lifetime and after, between his passing and the occurrence of Ashura. What happened in those years in our terms of our books? Were the Ahlul Bayt fasting at that point? And then also on the day of Ashura, so you're saying we're disassociating with what the Umayyads have done. I'm presuming that you're saying that they fasted from that day onwards. And is fasting generally a thing to celebrate? I
think when you think of that you have achieved something and in turn you are fasting, it sounds like a nidhr.
Right.
You know, that you've made some sort of contract or an agreement and a promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if, you know, you take my destiny this way, I will return the favor with, you know, worship, which will be fasting. So I believe it's along those lines.
Right.
I could be incorrect. It could be something totally different.
Yeah.
And it could, as we know, you know, that the hadith and the evidences and the riwayat in the Sunni school of thought was actually promoted and backed by the Umayyads. So obviously there'll be things in there to benefit themselves and to, you know, you could say, push their agenda.
Sure.
So maybe you know it came through that.
So it became more
channel.
of an action to do post Muharram. So we're actually going back into historical terms. It
Yes.
possibly goes back to those events.
Yes.
So we're
And back to your first question as well.
Yeah.
I haven't come across anything
Sure.
in terms of after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and, you know, to the Ashura, in between there of any of our Imam fasting on the 10th of Muharram.
Yeah.
We do have riwayah to fast on other days. I mean, in the Rajab and in Sha'ban, there's so many different days. It's also recommended to fast on a Monday and a Thursday because Rasulullah used to do that. Also on the 1st, the 15th, and then the last day as well, to fast on those days. There is a great emphasis on fasting, you know, because it's very, very good for health purposes.
Excuse me.
But, you know, so like you were saying before, Alifah, that it sounds a bit weird for, you know, to make fasting makruh.
When it's such a
highly recommended act, but there must be a reason. There must be a very, very significant reason for our ulama to say on this day, makruh, please stay away from it.
Do you know, in a historical aspect, whether, so from the Sunnis' perspective, where they're saying that, you know, Prophet Nuh, Prophet Musa had these actions, are there other times that they're talking about previous prophets that our prophet also emulated their activity and said, okay, we're going to fast on this day? Or is it just Ashura that we have this, you know, dispute about whether you should be fasting? Is this?
I mean, like I was saying before, Rasulullah used to fast on the Monday and the Thursday.
But that wasn't based on other prophets, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't based on other prophets. If you're trying to say that, are there any actions which were inherited by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was based on other prophets? We do have some actions, but technically, all the prophets were practicing these acts. We have the cutting of the nails, cutting of the hair, combing of the hair, growing the beard. This was really promoted by Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. But even Rasulullah carried this on. So did all the other the prophets.
Thank goodness.
They were doing things like this.
But that's like, you know, general hygiene. It's about the piety of a Muslim. But fasting is quite a statement.
We haven't. I don't believe that there is anything we have inherited directly from any other religion. Our religion has always been the main foundation of all the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah.
And our jurisprudential lessons and our jurisprudential rulings have always been the foundation and the pillar of all Abrahamic faiths. For example, to abstain from pork like the Jews do, to abstain from alcohol, you know, and to worship. Even, you know, the Jews worship 3 times a day, in the morning, afternoon, and night. Very similar to the way we worship in the morning, afternoon, and night. Same with, you know, we have a concept of fasting. Jews also have a concept of fasting, and the Christians also have Lent. So there are there are a lot of similarities. I don't personally believe that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has tried to inherit or take from any of the prophets. I haven't come across.
Quite an odd statement, isn't it, to say, "Oh well, if they've done it and I'm better inheritor,
I haven't
I'm
come
going
across
to do
any riwayah or any, you know, Quranic evidence to prove that, you know, he just said, "Oh, do you know what, they're doing it, I'm going to add it on," or this or that. Our faith has always been the foundation, and it's always been the, you know, like the original pillar, you know, of monotheism of our Abrahamic background.
Just for time's sake, I really want to get this question in because, you know, we always sympathize and we grieve the fact that Imam Hussein and his whole camp didn't have access to food and water. So for us to actually fast kind of makes sense. But we understand obviously it's makruh because of the historical acts and everything that we've discussed. So is there a time frame where people do fast or refrain from something?
There is an alternative to fasting, which is actually highly recommended.
Right.
In our language, we used to call it faka shikni, where you would refrain from eating and to some extent drinking as well. Just those two things.
Yeah.
Eating and drinking. It's not like you're fasting as in you're staying away from your
everything else.
Everything else.
Yeah.
Smoking being one.
Yeah.
Not that I will condone and say you can smoke, don't stay away from cigarettes. But they would keep, or they would abstain from food and drink from Fajr to Dhuhr time, which was roughly the length of the Battle of Karbala, which started at Fajr and it was ended by Dhuhr time. So you would abstain from eating and drinking there, just to honor and also to feel what Abu Abdullah and his companions went through. Not to forget, they actually hadn't eaten or drinking for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And not to eat extravagantly. That's quite a theme, isn't it? In centres, that was very plain
Very
food,
simple
isn't it?
food,
Simple. And I think
I remember on Ashura, is Halim is served. I think every Pakistani mosque is Halim, and Halim is like a stew of lentils and meat, but very, very minimum.
Yeah.
All the other days you're going to get really nice food and very, very, because people are donating in the name of Abdullah. They don't want to give something that's mediocre.
No.
Yeah.
But on Ashura, it's specifically, it's like, a very, very simple, a very poor dish, you could say, because it's also to understand that, look, this is not a day for us to feast.
Absolutely.
This is a day to remember about.
Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a blessed day, and please keep us in your du'as as well.
You too.
We definitely would love to carry on the discussions around the fasting, because I've got 3 more questions in my head, just that alone to ask. But
maybe next time.
Maybe next time. But definitely, we look forward to our next session, where we're going to be speaking about another controversial topic, which is going to be very interesting to look into. But for myself and Zara and Said, we thank you for your time, and thank you for watching Morning Barakah, and we hope that you have a blessed and mournful Muharram and Safar as well. Thank you very much for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Daily element Hussein, with everything patient, with your love impatient. Daily element, daily element Hussein.